So the first question that I've got is from Vulitsani V, and it's this. It's visual literacy, and it's this particular cartoon. So let's just have a look at it. The examiner has very kindly established who the man is and who his dog is, because the examiner doesn't want any confusion. So it's a Hagar the Horrible cartoon, and the dog is thinking. How do we know he's thinking? Because it isn't a speech bubble. If we look further down, the speech bubble over here has got that, which shows us that this is what the character is saying, and this is thoughts. So those little bubbles like that leading to a bigger bubble, thought. So the dog is thinking. Some people think a dog's life is easy, just hanging out and having someone take care of you. The problem is sometimes my someone forgets to take care of me. In frame 4, he says, "I'm starved. He's forgotten my dinner again. I hate to depend on a forgetful human. Well, I can't talk, but I sure can bark." And he starts barking in frame 7. "Good boy, Snert," says Hagar, "thanks for reminding me." And he puts him outside, saying to him, "If you didn't bark, I wouldn't have known you had to go out." Right, so that's our cartoon. And there are our questions. Now, Vulitsani, what I'd like you to do is to tell me what the problems are. Because the paper's on the internet, the memo is on the internet. So it cannot be that you haven't got at least the examiner's answers to the questions. So what I say to my own students is answer the questions. Don't look at the memo until you've answered the questions. It's fatal. Once you've looked at somebody else's ideas, they are guiding and directing and controlling you, and you tend to think that way. Much better, answer it yourself. Then mark it against the memo. And then send your question to me saying, "I said this for question 5. It's not on the memo, but would it be accepted? Is it within the range of possible answers?" Because remember, it's not quite like your organic chemistry with right and wrong. There are intelligent, thoughtful answers, and there are just crazy, I don't know where you got this from kind of answers. So send me your answers, and Vulitsani, tell me what's the problem. So I look at these questions, and I don't see any problem there. Don't think there should be a problem there. Wonder here. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out what the problem is. Is it that you can't get a word for feeling? Now, I agree. Feelings are difficult to be specific about. And remember, the 3 that home language students have to avoid are happy, sad, and angry. The home language examiners feel that students use these 3, but they're very often not the best word. And for home language, the examiners are looking for a more precise or accurate word. FAL, certainly happy, sad, and angry. Just make sure, though, that they do fit. And remember, home language, you can use these when they are the right word for the context. So I'm wondering, is that the problem? Are you having difficulty expressing a feeling? So we'll look more closely at that. then how do you know this? In other words, this answer in A, you get because of your reasoning in B. Now, in home language, they would ask the question together. So, how do you know what the dog is feeling at this point? 3 marks. In FAL, they split them to help you scaffold your answer. So maybe the problem is there. This one is about the viewer. How does the viewer feel? And obviously, embedded in these 2 marks, your reason. So I'm wondering, is that the issue? Are you saying, or are you asking me, is there only one possible answer, the answer on the memo, or are there other possible answers? So maybe we'll look more carefully at that. And then the last one is the message of the cartoon. And maybe you're finding it difficult to work out what the message is. All right, so with those things in mind, and I'm wondering, therefore, if my focus should be here and that these things are very easy, let's see. So let's just go to frame 3. Who is the my someone? So what are we answering? The problem is sometimes my someone. Owner? Master? Person who has the pet? I know that some people don't like the idea of owners and masters, but certainly maybe then the person that looks after the pet. Fine, not a problem. Right. 2 ways in which the cartoonist shows the reader that the dog is very hungry, and we're referring to frame 4. 2 ways. You could look at the diction. Diction, the word chosen. The word is starved, and that implies very, very hungry. Secondly, you could look at the bold font. Thirdly, you could look at the exclamation mark to stress that he is desperate. You have to do 2, choose 2. I don't think that's tricky. I hope it's not. Okay. Now we're looking at frame 8. How is he feeling and how do you know? So there's frame 8. He's barked at Hagar to tell Hagar that he's very, very hungry. And Hagar praises him in frame 7, thanks him for reminding me in frame 8. Right. How is he feeling? All right. If we went to happy, sad, and angry, which one would we go for? We'd go for happy. All right, so let's look at happy first of all and say that Snert is feeling very happy. How do I know? Because he is leaping, jumping, excitedly off the ground. But there is that obvious heart. So here we wouldn't say happy with the heart. We would say he appreciates Hagar. He is feeling warmly affectionate towards Hagar. How do we know? Because there's the heart to show that he is so grateful that Hagar is going to feed him. Home language students, is there a better word than happy? He is delighted that he is about to be fed. He is excited that he is about to be fed. He is joyful that he is about to be fed. Okay, so I don't think that was that tricky. Then we have explain how this cartoon makes you feel about Hagar. So I think if you're wondering, are there lots of possible answers here? I think there are possible answers within a range. So you could either say things around irritation or annoyance. Let's just try and look at what we could say. Perhaps the viewer is irritated by Hagar, annoyed at Hagar's behavior, frustrated. Remember, there's a second mark. So give me a reason. Irritated by Hagar because he neglects his dog. Annoyed at Hagar because he is so insensitive to his dog. How do we know that it's around a mealtime? Well, if you look at frame 4, Hagar's drinking. In frame 6, he's burping. So he is at least satisfying himself. So we could be frustrated because he is selfish. He has made sure that he is satisfied, but has not shown any concern for his dog. Maybe you want it stronger. We condemn Hagar because he has a dog, and as an owner, therefore, he has a certain responsibility, and he is being completely irresponsible. Are we contemptuous of Hagar because he is such a selfish, insensitive man? Contemptuous is the adjective. Contempt is the noun. And that is when you despise someone. You look down on that person as being inferior. So here, we are contemptuous of Hagar because as a human being, he has a certain responsibility. If we go back to our cartoon, excuse me, he says, the problem is that my someone forgets to take care of me. And in frame 5, I hate to depend on a forgetful human. So we despise him because of his forgetfulness. And we pity the dog who is controlled or dependent on such a forgetful man. So are there possible answers? Yes, look, we've got quite a few here. But these are within a range. You couldn't say, I feel really sorry for Hagar. He has this noisy dog that's barking at him. That would be incredibly unfair. So do you understand? Yes, there's a range. Are you allowed to be within that range? Yes. Are you allowed to say something that I haven't thought of and that isn't in the memo? Yes. It needs to be accurate for the cartoon and supported by a reason. So the marker evaluates your answer on the quality of your answer. So you can't just say, I am very pleased with Hagar, full stop. Because all I'm going to do is put a question mark. Because I can't see that pleased with Hagar? I'm not getting this. So you need to persuade me with the quality of your insight and your thinking why your answer fits the context of the cartoon. Okay, so maybe that's where some of the problem arose. Okay, then, do you think the cartoon conveys an important message to readers? I have an issue with the word important. If we look at cartoons, we get the single frame cartoon and we get the cartoon strip. And you've noticed that if they give you a cartoon strip, they number the frames for you. And cartoons really, there are many different kinds of cartoons, but I'm going to put sort of two big categories. One is social and one is political. Now, they very seldom set you a political cartoon in your final exam? I've never actually asked for a reason handed down, but I think let's be sensible here. You don't want to set a political cartoon about a country you don't know. So we know at the moment that there is fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But what would be the point of setting that? First of all, your papers are set usually a year in advance. So whatever was politically important then, people could barely remember it a year later. They do sometimes set things like the Earth, so climate change, that kind of thing. So that sort of political cartoon, which is related to major global issues, but not often. What they usually set is what I'm calling the social cartoon, which features ordinary people. I know you might think that Hagar the Viking is not an ordinary person, but he represents ordinary people. And here we've got the ordinary man and his dog. They set fights between siblings. They set issues around gender. And you might think that that goes into the political side, but they usually don't set anything too heavy. Are you with me? So is it an important message? Usually not. Usually the message of the cartoon is an insight into ordinary, everyday lives, everyday people, and our mistakes, our hopes, our failures, our relationships, those kinds of things. So an important message, well, don't you're not looking for something that is world-shattering. That's what I'm saying. So what is the message of such a cartoon? So is that what's causing a problem? Is it the difficulty of getting to a message? If I were dealing with Macbeth, I would be asking you for the theme. And I know that students battle to get a theme. So maybe this is where the problem was for you. Okay, so what is it about? How do we get to a message? Start with the easy stuff. Start with the story. So the story is of a dog who is desperate to be fed. He barks to tell Hagar, his owner, the person who looks after him, that he's hungry, and the owner makes a mistake, let me spell mistake with a T, and puts him outside. So that is your story. What then is the message? We could start with, when you have a pet, you are responsible for looking after that pet, and you should also be aware of what your pet might want, what might be upsetting your pet. You should be at least a little aware, a little sensitive towards that pet, especially if that pet's quite expressive like a dog. Now, you might think that dogs can't communicate, but they communicate very well. And even for somebody who doesn't know an animal very well, you can see that the dog's communicating. The way it looks at you, or the way it backs away from you, or maybe it growls slightly. So you should be aware of the animal around you. So it's important in the sense that you shouldn't have a pet if you're not going to look after it properly. But it's not important as in world-shattering, my gosh, this needs to be on the evening news, all right? So, but it is important. So I would say that's where you should go. All right, so is there any other message? Let's go all the way back and look. Well, maybe we could say, if we look at the whole cartoon, that part of the message is a dog's life. Now we have that as an expression in English, that a dog's life is actually a hard life. So possibly the message is that our animals, or the animals that we have, our domestic animals in our homes, these animals can actually suffer if we are not responsible. Do you see it? It overlaps, but its focus here is on the animals, whereas our focus here was on the responsibility of looking after the animal. So once again, if we go back to the marks, let's just look at the question. It's for 2 marks. Give a reason for your answer. So once again, all the examiner wants is an insight into the cartoon. I've read the cartoon, I've understood the cartoon, and this is what it's saying to me, because a cartoon's meant to give me some sort of insight into ordinary everyday life. And that's the insight that it's giving me. If you want to make it a little bit sadder, if you like, for me the sad thing is that last frame. There he is outside, he's still starving, and now he's outside as well, so he has to bark once again to get back inside. And then, does he have any hope of getting Hagar to understand that he's hungry? So you could say then the message there is about the pain of being a dog, the hurt. He says that frame 5, I hate to depend on a forgetful human. So he's sad and he's unhappy and he's miserable because his human is so inadequate. So maybe that message is about the pain of being an animal in a human being's control. But once again, what is the marker going to look for? Have you given me a message, a main idea, which comes out of the story and the characters in the story? And have you explained where you got that idea from? And please do not express a theme as one word. So don't say, the theme is dogs, and my reason is because there's a dog in every frame. Because that's not getting to the message. If your theme is dogs, fine, start with dogs. What about dogs? That they depend on humans. And that's fine if they've got a responsible human in their lives. But it's not fine when the human's not responsible. That's the theme. So do you see, you can start anywhere you like, but you must get to a theme.